welcome. My name is Bobby Spiegel, and I'm the Executive Vice President for the Corona Chamber of Commerce. And I just want to let you know that today is in our community, and we are featuring a hometown hero. And this is Mr. Warren Wilson, and he's going to give us a little history of what he has done through World War II as well as the Korean War. Welcome, Warren.
Thank you, Bobby.
Why don't you give us a little background on how things are going and tell us a little bit about where we're headed with this whole story.
Well, I'm so glad that I can be here. There's 5 or 6 other places that I could have been. But I had a guardian angel who said he wanted me here today. So that's why I'm here today. Maybe with, if you play the game, the TV game, The Price is Right, I Want to Be a Millionaire, they have a lifeline in store for you. 3 lifelines. And I have figured that I have about 6 lifelines to cover.
Why don't you tell me a little bit about those lifelines?
Well, let's start with the beginning. Something has to start at the beginning. I was born, of all time, on Election Day, 1920, when Wilson and Harding were running against each other for president. One grandfather was a Republican in Iowa, and the other was a Democrat in Iowa. Very, very, very controversial there. Well, when I was born, it was obvious who got my name. It came out Warren Harding Wilson. I was born on the farm in Iowa, and I lived out there like that. Of course, my father didn't last long with me because he was killed in a horse and buggy wreck when I was 3 years old. My mother and I lived with my grandparents for a while, and then she remarried to a World War I soldier when I was at least 5 years old. They lived together there until I was 8. And by the time I reached 8, they both had died of tuberculosis. My first lifeline came about when the county health department kept coming out to see me all the time, wondering why I'm still alive. After 3 years with them on tuberculosis, they couldn't figure it out. Well then, after that, I lived with my grandparents. I grew up with them. My grandfather had 6 children, 3 daughters and 3 sons. And there happened to be only the youngest son left, who was about 7 or 8 years older than I was. So I lived with him for a long time. I went to school, a little local school a mile away. I was able to walk to school. The classroom was about 15 students, 1 teacher, which is ideal. I think they should have it nowadays. If you couldn't understand what's going on in your class, you listen to somebody else's class that you do understand. It was really nice. It was a lot of fun. And by the time I was in the 7th grade, things began to happen. And at that time, our Sunday school teacher always was trying to teach our boys in particular how to pray. He says, you don't have to make a long prayer. Fellas, just make it short. Tell God what the trouble is and what help you need. So, okay, we can do that. That's short. And at that time, in the 7th grade, my job after school was to go home, walk out in the cow pasture, and just bring back all the cows. We had a lot of milk cows, Holstein cows. And as we bring them back, the teacher told me, I should always practice singing because I love to sing. I guess I wasn't very good, that's why she said practice. But anyway, I was walking back to the cows, snapping the black snake whip. The dust was flying, a roar in the sky, thunder-like. And all of a sudden, the cows going down this little cow trail, probably 50 feet ahead of me, they had all passed, and here was this big old Holstein bull, stopping right there, bellowing and pawing dirt. Telling me I couldn't sing, I'm sure. Well, that's when I put into use my Sunday school teacher's lesson, make a prayer short and quick and what you want. So I told God, help me to run to the fence before this bull catches me and not fall down in this cow pasture. Well, I beat him just by about 10 feet. So he followed me all the way home on the fence, me on one side and him on the other, until I got home, put him in his stall, I cutting hay, and he still mumbled at me to keep their mouth shut. So that was about the end of my second lifeline, I guess.
The end of your singing career?
End of my singing career, yes.
Very good. Very good. And so today what we want to do, though, is go into the next part of your phase of life and some of the things that you experienced, Warren. I know that a lot of changes as a young man, living without your natural parents, having your grandparents be able to take you in, that was a big step and something different than most people had. And so I wanted to bring that up to you. We're going to be talking a little bit more on our next segment. We're going to need to take a little break real quick and cut away for a commercial, but stay with us. This is In Our Community, and I'm Bobby Spiegel with the Corona Chamber of Commerce.
Hi, my name is Diana. I'm from the Silver Dollar Pancake House here in Corona. My husband, Robert, and I are the owners. We've owned it for 13 years. We are the oldest restaurant here in Corona, built in 1922. We have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We have some fabulous breakfast and lunch specials. If you're hungry, everything is freshly made to order. We are now celebrating our 13th anniversary owning the place. And so if you have a big appetite, want to come on down, we're open Monday through Saturday, 5 a.m. to 4 p.m. And for your convenience, we're open on Sundays from 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. So come on down and introduce yourself. We'd love to serve you.
Welcome back to In Our Community. I'm Bobby Spiegel with the Corona Chamber of Commerce, and today our special host and guest today is Mr. Warren Wilson. Warren, we were talking earlier a little bit about your childhood, and I know that prior I had a conversation with you, and you had mentioned about 3 people and 1 organization that really impacted your life. Why don't you share that with us?
Yes. Well, as I mentioned before, the minister or the Sunday school teacher was one of them, and the other was my high school teacher, and the third one was my grandfather. He did an outstanding job of taking care of me at my age. I was in high school. I liked school very well. My best subject was typing, and that's where the typing teacher come in. And very few teachers say anything to the parents that Johnny ought to do this. But my teacher said to my grandfather, you should send him to business college. I was typing 70 words a minute on that old manual. So he sent me to school 50 miles away, went to a business college, and there I increased the speed a little bit to 80. And while I was there, a young fellow came in the store where I was working after school and said, I can get you a better job. I can get you one with room and board, travel, free medical care, and you get $21 a month. So I said, well, where is it? He says, where do you want to go? Well, I like the Philippines, so I said, get me in the Philippine Scouts. Well, that was one of my lifelines that did not work because I had to wait for 2 weeks for the Department of the Army to okay me to go. In the meantime, Hitler started playing with Poland. And at that time, then I said, no, you can't go to the Philippines. Well, had I gone, I'd have been in the battalion death march. When I went back then to the recruiting station, signed up to go to Vancouver Barracks, Washington, which was the farthest place in the States I could go. I went back there, joined them, 7th Infantry Division, 7th Infantry Regiment, 3rd Division, and when I signed up with them, they were just getting rid of their mules. I forgot they had mules in the Army, and they brought in the new trucks. And it was quite something to see those soldiers not being able to drive, but to wash the trucks. But as soon as the first sergeant found out I could type, I was busy most of the day and the night. I worked 2 jobs at the same time, you might say. I was then promoted from the rank of a private typing in a company. They saw me in headquarters. They pulled me up there to headquarters to type. And from there, I went on to another headquarters to type. And they couldn't believe, I guess, that a man could type. I must have been a novelty. But after I got up there, then Pearl Harbor came. That's December 7th, 41. I was working for this reserve headquarters, and immediately they called all of us back to work, and we started calling out the reserve. That was on December 7th. And when that was finished, then they asked me where I wanted to go. I said, well, You want to go to Alaska and become a master sergeant? I'd only been in the Army, a couple of years. And I did not, no more cold weather. I wanted to go to something nicer. So they said, how about Georgia? They'll send you to officer training school in Georgia. So that's where I went to infantry officer training school. I come back from that and I went assigned to the 35th Infantry Division out here in California. We were guarding the ocean side here from the Japanese.
Excellent, excellent. And right now what we want to do is break away for a quick commercial break. This is Bobby Spiegel with In Our Community, and we'll be back shortly. Stay tuned.
Hello there, I'm Jack McCauley with Trench Shoring Company. We're a shoring supply company here in Southern California. We handle shield systems, boxes, aluminum hydraulic shoring, SBH slide rail, beam, and plate. We also carry a full line of plugs, bypasses, and confined space equipment. If you are a general contractor, a pipeline contractor, city, municipality, plumbing contractor, electrical contractor, please give us a call. We can handle any of your underground needs. You can call us at 909-734-4290. And we also give instructional classes on trench and excavation classes and confined space. Please give us a call. We have 6 locations to serve you, and we've been in business for over 30 years. Thank you.
Welcome back to In Our Community. My name is Bobby Spiegel, and our special guest today is our hometown hero, Mr. Warren Wilson. And I'm going to bring the group right back up to speed where we broke off before. And Warren, you had talked about 3 people that were very influential in your life and also one organization. And you've talked a little bit about a couple of them, and I'd like you just to recap, if you would, just the people that have made an impact on your life.
Okay, well, the 3 people were my Sunday school teacher, my high school typing teacher, and my grandfather. And then the group, or the club that helped me the most on my outside life was the PTA.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about this and talk about your trip over to England and your part in the service there?
The PTA was involved when I was in the military at Fort Bragg. My neighbor was a colonel's wife, and she called me captain. She says, you've got 3 kids going to school, and I need some help selling the PTA magazine. Won't you help me? I couldn't say no. He was a colonel. So I said, okay. All you got to do is sit at the table, and people will come up and buy the magazine. Well, that isn't so. They don't do it that way. So I happened to be working for the general at the time, and I was telling him my story, and he says, I'll buy a magazine from you. Okay, so I said, I'll get the photographer. We got the photographer in, and he showed a picture of him buying the magazine. After that...
That picture was put where?
That picture was in the newspaper.
In the newspaper. So what happened after that?
After that, I sold over 500 magazines to the military people on the post. Whenever the general said jump, they didn't ask how high, they just jumped.
So he was basically saying, I'm going to read, you need to read.
That's right. And every week while I was working for him, every week, somebody would come in with his arm in a cast and neck in a cast on canes and say, you ought to join the airborne. It's $100 a month more. And that's not a good selling point. On the PTA magazine had good stuff to read on kids, and I kind of liked that. Well, anyway, when we left the beach, I just went to overseas to go to England. Our last stop was in Camp Rucker, Alabama. There we had to go out and field train. And mind you, I was in the infantry as the platoon leader, and I had the 3rd platoon. So the final blow was we have to have all our 30 men go out and capture this ridge up ahead a little ways with live ammunition. But we had this one little fellow in our companies that we called him Lightning. That didn't mean he was fast. But anyway, we called him Lightning. And every time an inspector would come, we'd send him down to buy candy somewhere to get him out of sight. Well, when we got out to do the firing, why, he was assigned to Lieutenant Waddell in the 1st platoon. They got out there, loaded their ammunition, and he turned to Lieutenant Waddell and he said, Lieutenant, I'm going to kill you. So right away they reassigned him to the next platoon, the 2nd platoon, Lieutenant Gilbert. Well, he wasn't quite so bad. He says, Lieutenant Gilbert, I'm going to shoot you. Well, I knew I inherited him. So when I did, why, he didn't have time to tell what he was going to do to me. But right away, when I got him, I made up my mind what I was going to do. I'd give him my .45 and take his rifle, because I knew he couldn't shoot the .45. And I took his rifle, and then I told my platoon sergeant and the squad leaders, I said, now look, we're going to send him to every squad leader with some message. Ignore it. But keep him moving. Do not let him stop and lay down. He'll shoot somebody. He'll want to. So that happened. So we wound up getting through the message all right with the live ammunition. And we got back the next morning, and there was no lightning ladder. He was gone. He's back in Minneapolis somewhere, probably in a banker or something like that. So right then we went to the beach and we got onto the ocean liner, the big ocean liner, and went to England.
Excellent. So when you're in England, tell us a little bit about your activity.
We had a little preliminary training there while just before the beach landing. We were afraid we were going to be the beachhead, but we were not. We followed the 29th Infantry Division in, and we went in about the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd of July. And on the, about the 8th day, we had 3 sets of twins in our battalion. And on the 8th day, we had come back with the message, only one twin was left alive. So after that happened, why, of course, things got a little bit touchy on who had relatives in there. But anyway, I was assigned, and I'll show you a little later on, I took off a knife from one of the prisoners that we had captured up to that time. Now, Germans were knowing that we were going to invade and capture St. Lo. That was a foregone conclusion, I guess, because that morning we were all set to jump off, capture St. Lo. Well, they knew it, so they began to throwing all the artillery and mortars at us they could. We were along the hedgerow in France. We had a hole dug too, but we were on the hedgerow. After we got going for a little while, something hit me that said, you know, you're going to be, I got to have a drink of water, can I?
Please, go right ahead.
All right.
This is quite a history story here that we're sharing with you, and I hope that, a lot of people, I know that my kids, when we were talking about this show coming up, and I was telling them about Mr. Wilson being able to type on a typewriter, they kind of looked at me puzzled, because what is a typewriter, And it's almost like a whole generation has moved into the new millennium and all these new bells and whistles, but this is history, and I hope you're enjoying this. So let's go back to Warren, and please continue.
Well, we were being shelled like mad. They were throwing everything at us that they could. I had a voice come to me and says, "Get up and move or you'll be killed." Just like that, just like somebody was hollering it across the way. I stuck my head up and looked around, and I didn't see anybody around there who would say that, because I was a lieutenant, and it's not normal to do that. So I got back down and began to sweat, just stuck my head down again, and the same message came out again, "Get up and move or you'll be killed." So that got my attention real good, and I looked up again, and I hollered back to my radio sergeant, Bill Raggio. I said, "Bill, you got a little room for me back there?" He's about 50, 60 yards back. He said, "Sure, come on back." So I jumped up and ran back to him. He was in a foxhole, and I jumped over, and I was most of the way on top of him for protection from the hedgerow and all that. I jumped down in there and got down and looked up. And coming around the corner was Lieutenant Kennedy and his runner, and they saw me get out of my foxhole, so they made a beeline right for the same hole. And when they went into my hole, a mortar shell went in with them, and it just blew them all over the place. Well, I inherited a free airplane ride back to England to the hospital, and they patched me up best they could, and then I rejoined my organization.
Well, this is great, Warren. I need you to stop for just a moment, because you know what? We need to take another commercial break. So this is Bobby Spiegel with In Our Community. Stay tuned.
I will never see her walk down the aisle in her graduation gown. Because after she had a few wine coolers and a short drive, our family will never be the same. Set boundaries and consequences. Tell your teen, never drink and drive. Check yourself.
Your kids won't tell you what you want to know about ecstasy, but we will. Go to drugfreeamerica.org.
Welcome back to In Our Community. I'm Bobby Spiegel with the Corona Chamber of Commerce. We've got our special guest today, Mr. Warren Wilson. And Warren, you need to kind of slow up and kind of go back to where we were, because you kind of covered that whole shelling and all this stuff that happened. Kind of review that a little bit for us, please.
Well, those shells were coming in fast. I had to get out of there. Yeah, it was the hole I jumped out of. Those two other fellows jumped in. The shell went in with them and blew them clear out of sight. It was a direct hit, as you might say. I picked up a couple of pieces of shrapnel on my leg, which I still have. I kept the mortar shells with me. Got some shells there. I got a hole in the shoulder. I got some stuff in the nose. And I didn't really realize how I'd been hit until I was back in the hospital with a blood transfusion in me. And in the hospital then, when I got recouped, come back, I joined my outfit. And in the Army, why they always train you for the job you're going to take. But this time I was a battalion communication officer, and my job was pretty well taken, so they said, well, look, we need a grave registration officer. And I hardly knew what it was, but they gave me a Jeep and a trailer and two little GIs out of a company that were scared to death too. So our job was to pick up bodies, dead bodies, Americans and Germans. And this was a horrible job. We drove all along France and into Germany. And some of the things you have to see and do is quite horrendous. The little fellows I had with me really got sick. But anyway, we made our way back, and we got up to Bastogne where the big final fight was going on. And the Air Force had caught a German convoy on the road, and they just shelled them, machine gunned them, hundreds of them, I'd say, maybe dozens of them. And they were all over the road, so we had to pick these bodies up. It was during around Christmas time, cold, their bodies were frozen. We just stacked them up along the freeway like cordwood.
Let me ask you real quick, Warren. I know it's difficult when you come across something like that. No. Did you get used to it? Is this something that, how did you, do you remember those things today?
Oh yes. The example would be the one we had, one of our old men got hit with German phosphorus right in the head. And he had his rifle out. They were making an assault, and they made the rifle, and his head was down top of his rifle with all this safety covered. So he had to, in order for me to get him off, I had to reach under there, all that brain down there, pull the safety back on. That was horrible.
Well, we're blessed that you're with us today, and I know there's a lot of people that unfortunately couldn't survive and didn't survive through the war, and that's the tragedy of a war. Let's go ahead and continue.
Okay. Well, we after we left Bastogne, President Truman, you'll see some pictures of him a little later, I hope, that will be shown that he was coming over for the Potsdam Conference. And our regiment was being part of President Truman's old outfit. They selected our regiment for the honor guard. So we met him at the airport, and honor guard while he was there on that affair. And after that, we loaded up and came back to the States for redeployment or discharge. So being National Guard outfit, they discharged the whole outfit in Fort Knox, Kentucky. And they asked me at the time what I wanted to do, and I said I wanted to stay in the Army. I came in 39. I wanted to stay in and get my 20 years in. So I signed up as a master sergeant, and I picked a spot back in Fort Lewis, Washington. My wife was back there, so I decided to join her at that time. Went back to Fort Lewis, was there for quite some time until the Korean War broke out. And then they decided they would send us overseas to Japan. Occupation in Japan in preparation for Korea. when we were in Japan, and prior to going to Japan, I went to night school in the Army. I wanted to be a court reporter, stenotypist. So I figured this out at night time, and I went to the school for stenotyping, and I would do about 100 words a minute before we got called back at the military. Went over, was assigned to northern Japan, Sendai. At that time, I wasn't there very long, maybe a month or two, and a message come down from General MacArthur's headquarters for a male stenographer. Most unusual, I thought. So I grabbed my little black stenotype box, went to headquarters in Tokyo, and I was assigned to the G2 Intelligence Division, where I was working for General Willoughby. So they had me give me a desk and told me to put my little machine box down on my desk, and when they wanted me, they would call me. But when they found out I could type 80 words a minute, leave the machine there and come in and just type. That'll be good enough for a draft. So that went on, and eventually then I became a warrant officer. And came back, the war got hot, so I got back to my first lieutenant's job again, and I was lined up to be top secret control officer for General MacArthur's staff. Every morning I took stuff to General MacArthur in his office, every morning.
That is great. Listen, we're going to need to take a little break here. We're going to break away for a quick commercial break. This is Bobby Spiegel with the Corona Chamber of Commerce in our community.
It is my opinion that the death of Daniel C. Hurd is due to acute drug intoxication. The only drug present in her system was ecstasy.
Well, welcome back. My name is Bobby Spiegel, and I'm with the Corona Chamber of Commerce in our community. And today we have Warren Wilson, who is our special guest. And you know, Warren, I'm going to just share with the audience. You have shared so much information, and unfortunately, our segments can only go so long. So we're going to be what we're going to do right now is really just set up for the next segment. But I want to make sure the audience understands that Warren had talked about 6 lifelines. And he's gone through 5 of them so far, and on our next segment, our next episode, we're going to be covering the 6th one, and the 6th one is really the one that you want to stay tuned for. So again, on behalf of the Corona Chamber of Commerce in our community, we would like to thank Warren for being here right now. We'd like to thank our audience for watching and participating, and be sure and look us up on the website, www.coronachamber.org.